Thank you very much, Vince, and good evening, everyone. Okay, my role is to share some financial information with you, and your role is pretty easy. I want you to envision yourself as the CEO of Florida, and it's a $100 billion revenue operation with $2 trillion in assets. So that's an easy task, right? So in the next 10 minutes, think about that. Think about the information that I share with you, and what would you do? And in addition to what I share with you, please share new ideas and different thinking that we haven't touched on. Thanks to these presentations we've all been privy to here, we've been given a tutorial on how to think bigger. Chris, your example was outstanding. 7 million hits, as I recall. And Chuck, your success in Orange County is motivational, very inspirational. Where's Lisa? Where's she? She likewise provided us with some very good examples. In Virginia, thank you for the details you provided. The devil's in the details, as we all know. And although I'm not going to talk about finances, as everyone knows, and Virginia talked about a little bit, a good part of the success we need to achieve has to do with regulations. One in particular was the governor's Blue-Green Task Force, which we really applaud his leadership in that regard. And they had some wonderful recommendations. We still look forward to them bringing them forward for passage. One in particular, the Health Department of Florida recommended another 2.7 million septics in the state. 1 million of them should be converted to sewer. And that adds up real quick, because a million septics converted to sewer, 20,000 a pop, it's $20 billion. That helps indicate why the state has a $50 billion restoration problem for our waterways. But tonight we'll just talk about the Indian River Lagoon. So, as Virginia mentioned, of the $5 billion in the lagoon, thanks to Dwayne DeFries and his outstanding team with the RLNEP, they've identified over 1,000 projects that total that $5 billion. And with the Brevard portion of the lagoon being 72% of the surface area, it's easy to see why Virginia's job is where's she going to get to $3 billion plus. I think those numbers could readily grow if we start transitioning to really high technology, including toilet to tap, that got some funding for research and implementation in the recent legislative session. So these are 3 ideas we'll talk about: consumptive use fees, water management rates, and bonding. Thanks to Kurt Smith's here with us tonight. We have to tip our hat and give kudos to the chairman of the Brevard Commission, Jim Barfield, Kurt Smith, and their colleagues. In 2016, they bravely voted in August of that summer. Of course, we had the room filled with 480 people in t-shirts saying "Save Our Lagoon." But it was an easy decision for them to pass that and put it on the ballot that November, which, as Vince mentioned earlier, passed by 62%. And hence today, what we thought would have been maybe $350 million has grown to maybe close to $500 million. A big, big help. Another new development that we're thrilled about, for the very first time in the past session of the legislature, Speaker of the House, Senate President, Governor DeSantis supported passage of a bill that would take 5.4% of the dock stamps every year, roughly $111 million a year. That's new, it's sustaining, it's long-term, it's money you can use. Again, it's for the state. It's a statewide problem, but hopefully we'll get our fair share of it. Also, they took advantage of the American Recovery Act, which Florida got, I think, $13 million, and they donated or dedicated $500 million for wastewater grants around the state. So that's big money, it's good money, we can all make use of that, and again, I think we'll get our fair share of it. Let's see. Yeah, the good news is, as Virginia talked about, we know how to fix our problems. As Vince said, I was chair of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We started in 1967, so we've had a number of years to work on it. We can fix these problems. We can fix the pollution problems. It takes visionary leadership, political will, and it takes a lot of money. We know how to do all of these, and you're familiar with them. Septic conversion, sewage treatment upgrades, stormwater retention, habitat improvements. Current status is that, as mentioned earlier, we do have the $500 billion coming in the door over 10 years with Brevard. But as everyone knows, the good news, and perhaps bad news in some quarters, is their population explosion. That presents its own challenges with climate change, sea level rise, rainfall and stormwater discharges. And as was noted a moment ago, we've got an algae-dominated estuary with, as everyone knows, record manatee deaths, absence of seagrass and declining fisheries. Those things are not sustainable. They're really bad news, and Chris laid out the case what that means to our economy. So here's one of the ideas that was actually kicked around. Dwayne and I met with a lobbyist, I think it's going back 3 years ago, about this particular idea. And that is, why don't we have a modest charge on the withdrawals from our aquifer, particularly the Florida Dam, the biggest one. And that number of 1.3 trillion out of the Florida Dam is probably a little old. I saw something from the Springs Institute research that they did recently that has that number approaching 1.7 trillion gallons a year. But at any rate, taking a very small fraction of a tenth of a penny applied to the 1.3 billion, it would cost the average homeowner, by the way, 50 bucks a year. But for the state, it would generate $1.3 billion. A tenth of a penny on those withdrawals, $1.3 billion. That's a level of funding that can really get the job done, not over 50 or 60 years, but perhaps in a 20-year horizon or sooner. We did, Vince mentioned this, we did a statewide survey in February of last year. We engaged Florida Atlantic University, and we weren't totally surprised, but the numbers were very impressive. They came back willing to pay $2 a month toward their local county or city municipality to help fund improvements in their waterways. That's the voters of Florida at that rate. And 82% said they think that their government, their local government, should do more. And 87% said they really demand that our waterways be cleaned up. So you have the populace of Florida behind us. And Chris gave a good example of how to touch them, what they'll react to. You know, when you talk about the statistics and the details and the weeds and the science, you lose it. But when you give them an example of what it means, as you did on that boat trip, you capture the imagination. It's just such a good example of thinking bigger. Another idea that's been talked about, actually the board and boards, both the Clean Water Coalition and Indian River County and our own Brevard Indian River Coalition, met with Senator Mayfield going back a couple of years to explore the thinking that they might have on this one. In 2000, the Water Management District rates were raising about $600 million a year. But due to some rollbacks and reductions, the Water Management District rates actually went from an average of 0.48 mils. I'll be technical about the money for a moment. But I just need you to get in the ballpark about the reduction. It's now roughly 0.24 on a statewide basis. So it's roughly been cut in half. And as a result, the total dollars have been cut in half. So if we were to do that, we'd get $165 million a year, and that's $1.65 a month, or almost $20. Again, that goes back to the survey that voters would be happy to help with. And it would be used as matching funds, which leverages that money up to $330 million a year. Again, it's the level that would do the job. The last thing here is the idea of bonding. That was suggested by some. The reason being, we're at all-time rates now, and if Florida were to go to the market and secure funding for, in this case, we're just using the example of the Indian River Lagoon. We've got $500 million coming in from the sales tax, so we need another $2.5 billion. And that would, at 1.8%, would require $150 million a year. But again, if it's shared 50-50 with the local jurisdiction, it can be done for $75 million a year between the local jurisdiction and the state. So that's a real quick cap. How's the time coming, Leslie? 2 more minutes, okay. So pretty easy peasy problem for you to solve, huh? I'm sure you have other ideas. I think the point that I really want to make with everyone that I don't see in the media, and it's not discussed in many circles, and that is the magnitude of our problem, a financial problem, to restore our waterways is not insignificant. It's big. But when you look at the report that Virginia shared, the Treasure Coast League of Cities did, that Virginia's economists did for the half-cent sales tax, these investments have a 20 to 33 to 1 return. It's smart, it's good business. So, how do we do it? We've got the public behind us, and I'll leave it to you. I look forward to your comments and suggestions during the discussion session. So thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.